Welcome back, Wackadoo Racing Channel, episode 34, and we're going to be working on the Fairlane 500 again. We still haven't gotten to drive it on account of the fuel system did in fact turn out to be totally ruined. So Kate ordered everything in and it all showed up while I was out helping Mom and Drake work on their projects up north. So we're going to try and get this thing running today and see if we can actually make that test drive happen. So if you're here because of that Fairlane 500 content, there's going to be a lot more of it, and I urge you to please subscribe if you do get any enjoyment out of this video. Big shout out to Dan and Ash at Dan's Garage, North Carolina for sending us some sweet stickers. They also are doing some really sweet builds, and as a father-daughter duo, that's pretty neat. So if you like our content, you might like theirs too. So feel free to go check them out. I apologize in advance that I can't control the elements outside in the driveway quite as well as I can in the garage. So if the audio is a little fuzzy, I apologize. But we're running out of daylight and we need to get to work. So one of the things we did get done at the end of the week last week is we got the bigger tires put on those centerline replicas. Now, we're going to be keeping an eye out for a matching set of legitimate center lines to go on the front, but considering these ones are so affordable, it does make the car look complete, and for now, they'll do just fine. So as you can see, the tank's already been removed. One high point for Ford because that tank came right out the top and you don't have to spend nearly as much time on the ground as some of the other ventures we've had to deal with. So we do like that, and it'll make putting the tank back a lot easier. So that's what a normal fuel pickup for this car should look like. However, that's what ours looked like. There was enough rust in there to completely clog this system to the point where we couldn't even get fuel through it after shoving some wire through it. The fuel screen that was on there had turned into gelatin and filled with tar from all the bad fuel, and we couldn't get anything through it. So we decided to just replace that unit while we're at it, so maybe we'll have a working gas gauge as well. So as far as the tank goes, the rust was so bad it was actually starting to come through the side of the tank. So I'm going to see if I can give you guys a little better view of that. But this tank had to be replaced. The amount of man hours it would have taken to fix this thing and restore the inside was totally not worth it considering they had other ones available on the shelf. So now that I can open this thing, I'm going to be very careful here. What this is just some of the dirt and debris that was inside of this tank. So that might have been very hard to salvage. Additionally, a lot of the material inside is unsalvageable because it's rusting so thin that if you try to put any weight on it, it just fall apart. We'd end up with pinholes constantly. We already replaced the fuel pump with a brand new one that should work just fine. But we gotta get that tank in there today. So we're gonna try and do that before it gets too dark. Maybe we can even go get some gas and try firing it up. There's our brand new tank. We're going to throw our brand new sending unit in, and that should get us on the road. So installing our new sending unit, it's nothing too special. This has got our pickup built in. So we've got our brand new O-ring installed, and then there's going to be our retainer. And we're just going to be very gentle not to tag any of this stuff as it goes into the tank. And this has some dowels on it, so it should index once it's in place. Should be right around there. Then we're going to take our ring and that'll install, and then we're going to use a punch to drive this around until it locks it all down. Now the key to this tank is getting that neck back behind the license plate. So because of the huge back of this car, we can just tip the tank up, slide it in, and then bring it right back down. Should be pretty easy, and then we're just going to put those bolts in. We'll add some seam seal around there later to keep any exhaust fumes out. Kate's going to go ahead and zap in the last couple of bolts here, and then we're going to hook up the vacuum lines, run a fuel line, and put some gas in this thing. So, last time we fired up the car, we fired it up on the oil that was already in it when we got it. And the level was right, smelled good, looked good, no reason not to, but we do believe that that's old oil, it needs to be replaced. So we did hear a lifter that was pretty unhappy to be resurrected as soon as we got it running. So we're going to go ahead and swap it out for some Lucas Hot Rod oil. This stuff's got a lot of zinc in it for flat tappet cam systems. We're also going to use a stabilizer to keep that oil up in the top end, specifically that talkative lifter. This is the high mileage stuff, since this motor's obviously been around the block a few times. K&N filter to top it off. Let's get started. Alright, fresh fluids in place. Go ahead and cap that thing off. We'll be sure to check it after we run it for a little bit, but should be able to just throw gas in it, connect the battery, and we should be able to try and fire it. So we got our oil changed and we put 5 gallons of gas in it. We're not seeing anything leak on the ground, so that's a good sign. So we're gonna prime it, put the battery on it, and hopefully as soon as she hits the key, we'll start seeing that gas cycle. Maybe she'll even fire right off. No reason to believe she won't, but let's see. Well, the new fuel tank holds, and it looks like we actually have a functioning gas gauge now, so that's really awesome. But for whatever reason, we're just overflowing the carburetor immediately. So we did replace it with a brand new fuel pump. I didn't imagine that to be making enough pressure that it would be overriding the float. So either the float's jammed or this thing needs a fuel pressure regulator. Either way, we'll deal with it tomorrow. It's too dark and too windy to deal with it right now.
All right, guys, give you a little update on the Fairlane. So where we last left off, we're having some carb issues. Fuel pump was just pushing fuel, so we knew we had a float problem. We needed to adjust the float, so we got that done, but we also went to replace the belt on the thing too. As we were replacing belts, we had bolts snap off. We got that fixed, and we also replaced the alternator. So it's holding charge, and it sounds really good, and it's doing its thing right now. I mean, listen to this thing purr. Yeah. Give it a little walk around, go to the back, see how this thing sounds. Give it a little sauce. Yeah. So, you know, she's a little smoky. She's still got some stuff to burn off, but I think all in all, she's running pretty well. So a couple things we still got to do. We got to check brake fluid level. Obviously we got to bleed the brakes, check trans fluid level, try to make sure it's going to shift in and out of gear. But all in all, we're sitting in a good spot.
So yesterday was a little bit of a mess. I went ahead and got that fuel system problem figured out. It was just a misset float, not a big deal. We'll deal with that a little bit more later because I just did it by eye. But I went to go ahead and replace the belts because that needed to happen, and go to take off the power steering bracket, and it immediately snaps off the first bolt. So I figure I'm gonna go ahead and oil these bolts up so I can take them off a little bit easier. At which point I realized the one in the alternator snapped off too. It then took me another hour just to take the other alternator bolt out because it was welded internally with all the rust into the actual alternator. So we ended up having to actually replace the alternator. So now it's got a brand new alternator. That needed to happen anyway, so not all bad. It was cheap. But today we're gonna go ahead and try and get some brakes. I went ahead and opened it up, and it looks like it was just empty. So I started pumping some fluid through it, and as soon as somebody else gets here to help me bleed them, we're gonna bleed the brakes off, and then we can try putting it in gear.
So, what do we have today, Dakota?
Well, we managed to get pressure to all the brake cylinders. We noticed that both of the fronts seem to be leaking. So we have a very small limitation for how long we're gonna try and drive this thing around because we don't have full brakes. You gotta punch them up, they're super spongy. So we're gonna need wheel cylinders for the front. Alternatively, the radiator is leaking quite a bit. It's probably just a bad cap, but I went ahead and ordered a new radiator anyways. So we don't really have the ability to tootle around, and the car has no license plates. So kind of sketchy all in all, but that's not gonna stop us from taking it up to the corner and back just to see it drive. Get some of the dust out from under it.
Sounds good. And there she goes, first maiden voyage. Hopefully it makes it back down the street. Maiden voyage and triumphant return.
Sketchiest test drive ever. First impressions.
It's sketch factor 9,000, but I'm really excited that it ran and drove down our street and even brought us back home.
It did make a maiden voyage.
It did.
It has
Go forward.
no brakes. When you pump them up and you do get something, it veers violently left. and the radiator is puking a little bit. So there's some improvements.
Yeah.
Let's get some wheel cylinders ordered in and see what
it's a project car. It's not going to be perfect, as I keep telling myself.
Not yet. Not yet, but it drove. I got friggin' tools and boxes everywhere. There's no flat surface to set anything down on. So I'm going to spend the morning cleaning that up, waiting for Kate to get off work so we can go ahead and tackle those brakes. She also got brand new shocks for all 4 corners. I'm going to show you why that's important a little bit later. The idea is today I'm trying to finalize some of our musical car situations so that we can get Project Blitz back in the garage. If you're new to the channel, Project Blitz is this car, our turbo swapped 72 Opel GT. So trying to get that back in here, so we're going to try and get this stuff cleaned up this morning, and then hopefully this afternoon we'll tackle the brakes on that thing so that we can actually take it for a real test drive where it's not super sketchy. So wish me luck.
2 hours later.
All right, guys, we're back. So did a little detail work on old Bronson. She looks nice and pretty. Still got a little bit of work to do on the interior, but outside she looks pretty good. And we got a Kate back at the house. So like we said before, getting front brakes. So we're not going to bore you guys with all the nitty-gritty details of the front brakes, but we will give you some updates along the way. So brakes are officially done on the old Fairlane. You can see they're done. So we're going to go ahead and take it around the block.
Front cylinders, pads, and springs.
Yep. So
drums look good. So we're going to try to take it to the end of the street and back, and if everything looks good and it's safe and it's not veering violently like it did before because they're out of adjustment, then Kate can drive us back and she can have the first chance to drive her car.
Perfect. You excited, baby?
Yes.
All right, let's try it. The first tests were good. It stopped nice and straight, and it did in fact stop. So this is one of Kate's first times ever using non-power drum brakes. So remember to stop nice and early, get a feel for them. And we probably have some more adjustment we can make. Remember, the harder you push, the better she stops. So you're gonna have to put your back into it a little bit. But I'm hearing the drums in the back parking right where they should. And the front's doing good.
Yeah, the hardest part for me right now is just because I'm a little shorty, so with my little legs, I gotta pigeon walk just to get to the gas.
We might be able to push the seat forward a little bit. But she's driving.
Yeah,
this is a drive.
Can't see anything.
How you feel, baby?
That's great. I can't see anything at the mirrors.
One's missing and one's
no, it's just a habit.
The point is, it drives.
Yeah, this is really nice.
And I fixed your blinkers.
I can hear them.
Yeah,
I'm
blinkers.
really excited. This is awesome.
That is so exciting. It actually sounds pretty freaking good considering the choke is still stuck shut. Baby, what do you think?
I love it. It's way more of a boat than I was expecting because I'm used to my new Subi, but I can get used to it.
We're going to let the pads, shoes break in a little bit on the front, and then we're going to put a little more preload in them so we can take some of that up. We do have some clunking in the front so that there's some suspension things that aren't adding up just yet. We already have brand new shocks for it right there. I'm going to end up hitting that next week, and I want to show you guys the difference between the shocks before and after. That's really important to me because it's pretty wild. The main thing that was bothering me is the fact that the radiator leaks, and we have a brand new all aluminum radiator. However, I did inadvertently buy the one for a big block, so I have to make a little bit of adaptation to make it work with our small block 289. However, I'm feeling pretty good about it. This car is now a driver. It can move on its own, as well as this one is going to get finished cleaning up, and then it's going to get back into the driveway so that we can bring over Project Blitz and we can get back to that turbo goodness. But for this one, I think that's it. Wackadoo out.